Welcome to the Decentralized Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Lytle, here with your other host.
Wyatt Carson. Good evening, Tanner. How are you?
I am good. A little bit sleepy. We were just talking about that. It's been a kind of exhausting day. We've been gunning it on our steps and our exercise, and it's starting to. The old man in me is starting to come out, I feel.
Yeah, we've been having fun talks. So we've talked about it many times on this podcast. Is Tanner and I and many of our friends have a Discord. It's very active, and we've had it since really the start of COVID, and it's just continued. But we've started this new thing is a lot of the guys in our group are kind of getting back into exercise and health, and we're really excited for everyone. And Tanner and I, we've kind of did our own thing for a while where we're like, yeah, we're going to the, but we've kind of the rest of the group's joining in. So every evening now, people are posting their steps and whatnot, and it's been really cool to see a group of guys all in their 30s encouraging each other and giving each other slaps on the back, good job, or you can get 5,000 more steps or whatever, 500 more steps. It's been really cool to see, and we've said it before and I'll continue to say it, at least from a guy's perspective, having a solid group of friends who support each other is a gift.
And that little bit of competition pushes you a little bit more, and
that's the secret.
That's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, Tanner, you usually blow everyone out of the water with your steps, but that's all right. But now you're feeling sore, so maybe it'll give him a chance to catch up. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so Tanner, I was thinking today about this podcast, and I was wandering through Hobby Lobby over my lunch break with my wife today. And we decided we wanted to go to a hobby store because fall is here, and we, well, at least in weather. When does fall officially start? It's like the 22nd, 20th, whatever. Anyways, it's fall for anything.
The leaves are falling now, so.
Right. It got down to like 35 here in Omaha the other night, so it's fall. But anyways, so in fall in our house, there's two major shifts that happen in our pattern, and my family's pattern is one, we pick cooking back up, which we were talking about cooking, and two, we get into our hobbies, and our kind of homebodiness kicks in, and we're not going outside all the time, and we're not hanging out with the neighbors every day or every weekend, so we get into our hobbies. And we're wandering around Hobby Lobby, and I spent way too much money on hobby stuff today, but I started thinking about how healthy it is to have hobbies. And, we usually focus on, find a hobby you can make money off of, but I also really wanted to focus on hobbies for the sake of mental health. And that leads us to today about hobbies and what they can be good for and how to continue and improve or maybe find new ones.
Yeah, so I'm always up to stuff. That's one of the things. I don't know if I have a problem or what, but I mean, I've done art for a long time. I've learned to play guitar, and most recently I've been learning how to tattoo, which I don't know if we've been talking about on the podcast yet.
I think we hinted at it, but let's talk about it a little bit because I'm really excited for you.
So we'll announce for the world, I'm officially licensed in the state of Nebraska to tattoo people. Doesn't mean I should be working on skin quite yet because I'm still mastering the fundamentals of that, but it's one of those things where I've been wanting to do it for a really, really long time. I've always really enjoyed it, and it's one of the few mediums of art that I really haven't taken a swing at. For a long time, I've done traditional art, oil paintings, watercolors, color pencil, graphite, mixed media, digital art, animation, 3D, and I've never, ever done tattoo stuff outside of late night parties with a Sharpie, which I think that was the original motivator of all, and why there's probably a bit of fear in our friends group coming around as well. But yeah, I've been really excited about that opportunity, and I'm apprenticing up under a guy here in McCook and at his local tattoo shop, and hopefully we'll be able to do some really cool things soon.
Yeah, when you told me you were exploring this, my first thought was like, oh gosh, here's another Tanner hobby. But I want to stress to anyone who's listening to this who doesn't know Tanner is that Tanner is a phenomenal artist, and Tanner will know I'm not one to just blow smoke for the sake of it. I genuinely think, Tanner, you're an extremely talented artist in the realism kind of spectrum, even. And everyone has seen realism tattoos, and you've seen good ones and you've seen bad ones. And why I have no doubt in my mind, Tanner, you're going to be excellent at this, and I've signed up to be one of your first guinea pigs. And I've never taken tattoos serious, so whatever you want. But I think it's really cool, man. And you, so much so that you went out and you did the necessary steps to get a license. It really shows that you're a motivated individual, and to be able to go that length just to kind of tackle another art form, it's really cool. Really cool.
Well, it's one of those things where it's nice to have outlets for your energy, right? And actually productive outlets. And it's one of the things that I've been struggling with a lot lately is, we talk about the phone and doom scrolling and all of these things. And so I find myself, if I'm not actually being what I would consider productive, and it doesn't have to be serious stuff. I mean, I can just be doodling or making something. And it really increases my well-being and also my fulfillment for the day. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about like what makes a good day for me and what makes a bad one. And usually it's creating something, whether it be doing something within work or within these hobbies where I actually start something, finish something, and have an end result.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's always driven me is I've wanted to create something that was bigger than myself. And I don't really know how to define that appropriately, but I think it might boil it down to, and I don't want to sound cheesy at the beginning of this podcast, but I'm fascinated with the concept of mortality, and not in a weird, creepy sense. Just, I think it's good to have a healthy understanding that you have a finite time on this earth, and to make the best out of it. And I really, truly absorb that in my thoughts, not in a negative way. Once again, I'm not running around singing emo songs and just talking about death all the time, but I use it as a motivator to kind of guide me in being a better person.
Have you ever written your own obituary?
I have, actually. Yeah. It's funny you say that.
I read a book earlier this year, and they had you do that, and it sounds super morbid, but actually it's more emotional than you think about, because you really resonate on what matters most to you and what you would want to be remembered for. So it's right in line with what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I view this as an exercise to set goals for myself. And, I'm not talking about make X number of dollars or do, accomplish X, Y, Z. It's simply, who do I want to be as a person? And I think life is a constant change. If you are not growing, I firmly believe you're stagnating. So I look at this and I say, similar to an obituary, it's a great example, is when I pass, it's going to happen someday, we all die, what do I want people to say about me? And I use that as kind of a guiding light. But anyway, so I've always viewed hobbies as I have always wanted to create something that just extended beyond myself. And I'm not talking I want to be famous, whatever, that doesn't hold a lot of appeal to me, but I'm obsessed with writing. I've written many tiny, short books. You're probably one of the few people I've admitted this to, but I'll admit it on a podcast. I'm really deep into writing poetry right now. I think it's an amazing outlet for me and really allows me to be creative, because I don't have a single, I can't draw, I can't paint. This is not a skill I possess, and I've tried, and it's just not for me, and I will never have the patience to be better at it. But I found that, something that works for me and allows me to express myself. Another thing, and the reason I was at Hobby Lobby today, is another hobby that I really found fascinating. It just fits with my mindset. I build dioramas, and I don't know if you ever knew that, Tanner, if I told you that, but I love building dioramas. I like miniature work, focusing on tiny painting. And, I painted some Warhammer figures before. Never played Warhammer, but I loved painting.
Oh, I have probably 10, 15 grand of Warhammer over in the room across the way. So
you get it. And I make houses. I've made castles. I've out of styrofoam usually. there's a phenomenal YouTuber out there, and he doesn't know who the heck I am, but I love him. It's called Black Magic Crafts, and I used to just kind of watch his videos, and he made, like Dungeons and Dragons or Warhammer terrain and castles and buildings, and I was like, I could do that. So I spent a stupid amount of money for the equipment, and this is also during COVID when lots of people discovered Hobbies, right? But this is something that's always stuck with me. It takes a long time, dozens and dozens of hours, and I just like the really focused work, and it's something that works with me because I can't draw. I wish I could, but how do you use? So Tanner, your life is full of hobbies and hobbies that bring you joy and passion. What's the value you see in hobbies? Why do you pursue so many different things? Whether they stick and they become lifelong hobbies, or something that you try and say, oh, that was fun, and then move on. Why hobbies for you?
Well, I mean, I am a giant nerd, and that's probably one of the biggest things. I just always enjoy learning new things, just always. And so sometimes that might be to my detriment because I'm really a big fall for that shiny object syndrome all the time, where very susceptible to that, where I see something and it's really sweet. Like, again, you were just talking about Warhammer. I had a conversation with my cousin over text, and he's getting back into it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, maybe I want to get my stuff out. And then you get on the websites and you start wanting all the new stuff and you want to learn, and then you just fall down these rabbit holes. So I mean, it's a benefit in many ways because it does alleviate stress. It helps you focus. It really is a really good mechanism to get into a flow state, which is just crucial for just mental well-being. And we've talked about it before on the podcast, where it feels like work environments now, especially with remote work where everyone's on Teams and email and all these notifications, you're just getting constantly interrupted. So when is the last time you've really gotten a strong, long flow session in your job for 3, 4, 5 hours? Well, you can get that going when you're working on a painting or working on some miniatures or writing poetry or woodworking or anything that you find really interesting. You can just lose yourself into that. And that's honestly one of the best things for me going into it. And that's why I probably keep coming back to it.
I think you hit it, at least for me, is it's become a little bit meditative. I'm not digging through my phone. I'm not watching Instagram reels or checking my email. That's still probably one of my worst digital habits. Does anyone else check their email like 30, 40 times a day?
Yeah. I
get interesting things.
I have to uninstall the app in evenings and weekends because I will just open it and check my email all the time.
Well, I'm glad that you're there with me, but also it's a bad habit because it's not like I'm ever getting super interesting emails on Gmail or something like that. But anyways, so when I'm in a hobby, I'm in a state that I don't normally find myself. You nailed it, Tanner. Work, I'm getting pings, I'm in meetings, I'm doing XYZ, blah, 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 blah. But never am I in a constant state of hard, deep work for 4 or 5 hours. That doesn't happen. What is the average length of focus at work? Like 20, 30 minutes max? Right?
No, I think it's in the seconds.
I'm
pretty sure it's in the seconds. I can't remember the exact thing, but I want to say, and we can Google it, but I'll just be dramatic for the sake of this, because we brought it up on a previous podcast. I want to say it was something like 28 seconds between switch tasking, because that was the thing. It was you're checking your email, you're doing this, you're going back, and it's you cannot multitask. You can just switch task on this. Wow. Have you ever watched the show Alone on Discovery?
Oh, where the people will go out and survive for X number of however long by themselves? Yeah, sure. I've seen a couple.
The longer, the last man standing type thing. Mm-hmm. We've been watching that recently, and it's really engaging. Great show. But it got me thinking about what is it we're supposed to be doing without all these digital distractions, right? I mean, they have their cameras that they got to do, so it's a little bit slanted, but majority of the time, they're just working on maintaining or building their shelter, maintaining it, gathering food and resources, figuring out ways to conserve energy, preserving things, monitoring. It's just being very present, but you're always doing something. You're always occupied. The people who would just sit there, they would go crazy because they have nothing to do and they just lose themselves in the thoughts. So there's probably something very hardwired in us to where we need to be constantly doing little things, creating little things, solving little problems, keeping ourselves sharp. And it makes sense, just like fitness, which we were talking about before. If you're doing nothing, you just atrophy or you just get fat and weak, and your brain works entirely that same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've all gone through those stages of just kind of, you just don't feel like doing anything, so you don't. And we're talking exercise, hobbies, things that interest you. And I don't want to dip into the topic of depression, but we've all had those stages where we just don't intentionally don't do the things that bring us joy because we just don't feel like it, right? But I think there's something really powerful about finding a hobby that is quick and easy and just something that can keep your mind, the wheels turning. And what I mean by this is an example is, at work all day, I take a ton of notes at work. I have notebooks and notebooks piled up by my work desk over here of things I'll never look at again. But sometimes I do just flip through them like, oh, what was I taking notes on 3 years ago? And one thing that is consistent in my note taking is scribbles and like geometric shapes, because I can't draw, but I like geometric shapes, which probably translates to why I like making dioramas, which are houses and castles and stuff. I love the angles and the geometry and stuff like that. But I think there's something to be said about keeping your mind and body engaged. There's the downside to it, though, of distraction, right? For example, video games. Video games are a great hobby, but video games can become excessive. Playing on your phone can be a hobby, but can become a detriment after a while, right? So when does a hobby become a bad thing?
I was just thinking that about there's something a bit perverse now about digital entertainment because it is so designed to be so addictive. And in many ways, it makes you a passive participant rather than an active. And you can even find that in a lot of video games where I don't know, like you are participating in some degree, but you're participating in something that is designed for you in a specific method. So it's different than doing something like learning to play guitar or building a diorama set or actively playing something like a board game or something like that, where there's a lot of different problem solving ingenuity. You got to kind of figure things out yourself without being spoon fed to a different degree. So I don't know. I've been going on a big debate whether or not video games, and this is coming from someone who owned a store that sold video games, are really something that you should consider a hobby. I think it's a good dessert. If you think of it like your health and your diet, having it as an every once in a while fun treat. But when I think of a hobby, I think of something that you can really dedicate a substantial amount of time and energy into to really try to build up a amount of skill set. And I don't feel that video games, unless you're going into an extreme route, which is like esports or entertainment. I mean, there's always outliers who can make it, but those are so few and far between. There's something, I want to say, I was reading online, and it's something like it's over 200 million people in the United States play video games to some degree. And that's like phone games. It might even be higher than that. It might be like 250 million. It's a substantial amount of people, like 70 some percent of people play video games in some capacity. And I just don't think that that's a great use of time anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, there could be examples to counteract that, and there should always be examples. Like, don't just say, well, I don't think that, so you never want to do it, or I can't dedicate a lot of time because I play with my friends via that and I communicate and do all those things. But again, there could be other avenues of where you could probably get deeper or more meaningful time with them by doing a different activity as well. I don't know. Sorry for the tangent there.
No, I really appreciate you seeing that. So that could be considered a controversial opinion, but I like how you spelled it out. I think you make a strong case, especially for a dessert. I like that concept of calling video games a dessert, because there are people who start off playing video games as dessert, and then suddenly they're having dessert for every meal. You know what I'm saying? And they play a lot. And there, like I said, there's always fringe cases. I'm not here to call anyone out. I'm not here to say this is right, you're wrong. That's not the point. The point is, I find personally a lot of value of doing something that doesn't involve a screen, because our lives revolve around screens. You and I, we work in front of screens for 8 hours a day, and then we come and we do a podcast in front of a screen, and then we have our phones, which are a screen, and then we sit down with our spouses and watch a TV show, which is a screen. We are on screens 16 plus hours a day, give or take, bathroom breaks, and even then I might still have my phone. It's really cool to get back to a creative hand, moving my hands in conjunction with my brain kind of hobby. So yeah, my wife, we were hobby like my wife is really good at crochet, and I feel like that might be a weird thing to say, but like, we make the joke that her hobbies are that of like an 80-year-old woman. She makes some of the craziest things, and especially in the fall and winter, she does things like she'll make 30 hats to donate to a charity, or she'll make multiple blankets. She's making a sweater right now, and she is wickedly good at it. And I've always been kind of jealous of it, because it takes so much thought. You can't play on your phone while you're doing it. You can't even really watch TV because you're counting stitches, and I don't know how it works, but she's amazing at it. So she's kind of been the inspiration for me to get back into my hobbies that don't involve a screen. I can't in good faith call watching Netflix a hobby, but there's something positive about kind of getting back to your roots and building something with your hands and your brain.
Yeah. So I just Googled it. In 2022, there was an estimated 212 million gamers in the United States, which is approximately 70% of adults.
I was going to say, what's the population in the U.S.? Like 330 or something like that?
Yeah, or 70% of adults play, but it's a total of 212 million estimated.
Wow.
And women currently account for 48% of gamers in the United States. So this isn't something that's, a bunch of boys playing that. Mm-hmm. But I think you're onto something right, where so much of our lives now, especially with remote work and all this other stuff, is built around being on a screen. You're communicating through your phone, you're communicating through your computer, we're on tablets. Even like when we're driving to places, we have our screen with our GPS in front of it, but we're just always on it. So what it used to be was video games were a great disconnect from the reality of you were working in an analog world. But now that we're in such a digital world, you need to find that balance by doing some analog things. And I really like what you're saying, where before crocheting, my grandmother did that all the time. That was the standard thing to do. And now it's the, kind of kitschy, fun thing to do. And same goes with building dioramas and playing board games and miniature games, or, even learning how to tattoo and doing things like that is really nice. And that was one of the things that really drew it to me, because I've found, especially as I've been working more remotely and doing business remotely, I really started to crave in-person conversations. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I had in the game store days, where people would come to the store and I would we'd have events and game groups. I was always around people talking to people, and I've really started to miss that. And it's a really neat dynamic within a tattoo shop, where you might be working on someone for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, or it can be a huge commitment depending on the piece that they want to do, where you can be doing multi 8-hour sessions with them, getting to know them, talking with them, going through the things. You might get a little sick of them, but that's part of where they get sick of me, because I'll be rambling about whatever I've been thinking about the last few days or something. But it's a real interaction, and you're really working with your hands, and they have a real product that at the end is going to stick with them probably for the rest of their lives, unless they get it lasered off or covered up. But it has a really good draw to something that's very different than what I've been receiving recently.
Yeah. And I want to make a clarification about hobbies we're talking about today is I don't want to dip into the I found something I'm good at, so I try and build a company around it. Can you do that? Yes. Lots of people do that. Etsy was built around people who have hobbies who wanted to turn them into, monetize them. And, tattoos are different. Tattoos are something that you absolutely should be paid for. Like you said, you could be sitting there for 8 hours with the same person, someone you may not even like. But I'm not, when I suggested this podcast topic, I didn't want to hit on the topic of turning hobbies into a financial gain, selling it for money. There's value in that. Lots of people do it. Lots of people find success in it. I want to really focus on hobbies for the sake of your own mental health and to get away from that 9 to 5 grind, the constantly watching TikToks, the playing video games all the time. Unplugging and doing something with your hands and your brain that helps you grow. I think there's extreme value and can benefit other areas of your life by having hobbies.
Absolutely. And I mean, whatever activity you're doing, if you're genuinely learning it and diving deep into it, especially from more of like a first principles thing to try to really understand it, wrap your head around it, and do it independent of just following a tutorial. Because I mean, we all start that way. We watch a video, we do the steps, we color in by the numbers, do whatever, and you end up with the result, and that's motivating to get you to understand if maybe you like the motions and the movement of it. But when I think of a hobby, I think of really kind of diving into that world and wrapping yourself into that and understanding it and letting it envelop you a little bit. And there is a thing about wanting to keep certain things separate so you don't put too much pressure on it, because anyone who's ever started and owned a business will tell you that whatever you're doing doesn't matter. If anything, it's probably worse. I play less games now. Heck, I was just railing about video games after owning a video game store.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes about the business then. And that's what we want to avoid, is you want to do it for the love of the actions of the process, not because of the potential financial results that you could get from it, because that's not genuine learning and that's not genuine fulfillment or anything in those things. That's just an extra avenue. But what you do get from your hobbies that I would say that can lead to good financial things, especially within your career, is you build up a ton of transitionary skills and a bunch of new ways of pattern recognition, a bunch of new ways of problem solving. And in the business world, those unique perspectives will get you an advantage compared to not having it. And so that's one of the big keys, because you get people all the time like, oh, I just got to grind, I just got to hustle, I don't have time. I pour all of my mental faculties into my job, and I just want to go home, I just want to zone out, and I just want to watch Netflix. I don't have the resources to do those things. And you're like, well, you do. And it's just, and maybe not at the beginning, and you can work up just like exercise and all these pieces, but you really, by recharging and refocusing and learning and building, you're making yourself stronger, and you will make your job easier, and you'll do all these things. And the other thing that's great about it, especially if you're doing things with real people, is it's community building. It helps you practice interactions with people. I always remember a story that we used to do a lot of Magic the Gathering, and there was a 12-year-old boy that used to come in and play Magic, and he got pretty good, and he was really into it. But he was multiple times a week interacting at a peer level with adults.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think of a kid being shy, and some of these situations during card games can get pretty intense, especially if, the 12-year-old beats a 25-year-old or something like that who doesn't feel like they should lose, who's very competitive. But it gave that kid so much knowledge and experience and things to handle himself that if you go, once he gets his first job, that's all applicable. Once he goes to college or to moving through school or his career, all of those pieces are a really strong foundation just that he got from playing a game. So, I mean, you need to be strong on these. You need to be constantly moving on it. And then, know when to exit too. That's the other thing as well.
I love it. No, that's a really good. I would love to see a doctoral dissertation on Magic the Gathering at a young
sure
age,
it's out there.
developing soft skills to help. Oh, yes, I will not go pursue a doctorate just for this, but I would love to find someone who did. One really one of the few final thoughts on this is another way I look at hobbies. Anything from doodling on my notes at work to building dioramas. There's only one creature in existence that we know of that has hobbies, and that's human beings. And I like to look at myself in the perspective of the whole of nature. You know, I wish I could see a snake crocheting a scarf. That would be adorable, but it doesn't happen. It's a unique thing that makes humans unique, and there's millions of things that make humans unique to every other animal. But there's no animal out there crocheting, building dioramas, tattooing. Once again, that'd be sweet to see, but that's not realistic. And it makes us unique, and it's something that I think is intrinsically human. I told you I've been on a deep dive of history podcasts lately, and I found a fascinating podcast that really kind of, actually, it was from Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye. He has a hilarious podcast, but he invited this woman who teaches history at Oxford, and she came on to explain how everything we know about the Dark Ages is really just not true. Like, you think of Dark Ages and you think of just miserable peasants living in the mud and dying in wars or plague. And did that happen? Sure. But there's so much more. And once again, the Dark Ages was like a period of 400 or 500 years. People had hobbies. Did they work hard? Absolutely. Cannot deny that. Did they go off and die in wars that they probably had no idea what for? Yep, you bet. But they also had long winter nights. And what do you think they did when they were done working in the fields or doing whatever they did? They developed hobbies. And human beings, the entire length of human existence, have been much more complicated than I think history waters it down to. And that I'm not the first person to ever make a diorama. I bet you 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, someone made a miniature house out of sticks and thought that was fascinating. And it still continues today. And it gives me some sort of connection to humanness is what I see. And I love that thought.
Well, you talked about wanting to leave things behind, when we talk about mortality, and that goes back into making things in the real world that will last too, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a lot of value in creating art or learning carpentry or crocheting. I have so many hand-me-down blankets and different things from different members of my family who are no longer with us, but they're heirlooms and they go down. There's something fantastic about that, and it's something that allows you to remember. So, I mean, that's another piece of it all too, is figuring out what is worth leaving behind that is something that people would actually want. And maybe that's something to kind of strive for a little bit.
I love it. Let's leave it on that very positive thought. That was beautiful.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, all right. So to the audience, we would love to hear from you guys on this. What are some of your hobbies? And do you do them year round, or are you like me and just kind of dive into your hobbies in the winter when it gets cold and you don't want to go outside? But I'd love to hear other people's hobbies. We've gotten some great interaction lately. I appreciate lots of new followers, people messaging us. It's been great. Keep it up, guys. We love to hear from you.
Yep. And next episode is our 52nd episode, our 1 year. So we got some fun stuff in the works. I'm hoping to have a really solid podcast for that. That'll be coming out here in next week, I would guess. So.
Yeah. Like 52, 1 year, Tanner, and we haven't killed each other. No, it has been a blast. So
it's only been growing stronger and tighter, my dude. So
and I agree, it's gonna be a fun podcast. I'd strongly recommend that for people. So
all right. Well, until then, we'll see you all next time. Bye.